I, Lena Morales, 27 years old and a housemaid by the hour, pushed through the heavy glass door of the restaurant. The air inside was warm and smelled like garlic and old money. My hands, shoved deep into the pockets of a borrowed dress that was 2 sizes too big, still carried the sharp, chemical tang of bleach. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, pounding out a rhythm of pure anxiety, all because of a text message from my roommate, Rhea. She had insisted, "You have to go, Lena," she had said, forcing the dress on me. "It is a blind date. Live a little." The text message glowed on my phone screen, a beacon of my impending doom. Table by the window, the one wearing a black turtleneck. It sounded simple, but the restaurant, La Sponda d'Oro, was not simple. It was a long expanse of polished wood and hushed conversations, and the entire west wall was a sheet of glass overlooking the Hudson River. The water was black and slick, reflecting the lights of the city like scattered jewels. I saw 1, 2, 3 separate tables set for 2, all gleaming in the soft light, all undeniably by the window. My date was supposed to be some junior analyst, a nice guy. Rhea had promised. I scanned the tables. My eyes landed on the 3rd one, tucked away in an alcove, lit by the flicker of a real candle. Not one of those battery-operated fakes. It was the most romantic, the most private. I aimed for it. A moth heading for the most beautiful, and probably most dangerous, flame. It was a decision that was as perfect as a magazine cover, and just as fake. A young woman was already seated. My brain stuttered. She was not a he, and she was not wearing a black turtleneck. She had hair as black as ink, pulled back from a face that was pale and angular. Her eyes were a clear, startling gray, and she wore a simple knit sweater of the deepest forest green. Tucked neatly beside her chair was a wheelchair, compact and modern. She watched me hesitate, my awkwardness blooming in the space between us. Her gaze was completely calm, utterly placid. It was the calm of someone who had seen people react to her presence 1,000 times, seen them stare or freeze or look away too quickly. She was used to being a punctuation mark in other people's sentences, a pause they had not expected. The words tumbled out of my mouth, a clumsy mess. "I'm so sorry. I think I have the wrong table. I am meeting someone. He was supposed to be. I am sorry." I fumbled with the strap of my second-hand purse, the cheap plastic digging into my shoulder. The smell of bleach from my cuticles seemed to fill the air around me, a declaration of where I came from. My face was hot with a flush of deep, painful embarrassment. I wanted to turn, to flee back out the glass door and into the anonymous night. She laughed. It was not a loud sound, just a low, warm chuckle that took me by surprise. "Stay," she said. Her voice was clear, with that precise East Coast crispness. "My father is late again. You would be doing me a favor. Please." The words sounded like a joke, but underneath them, I heard a thread of pure exhaustion, a deep, bone-weary tiredness that I recognized from the mirror every morning. I hesitated, caught between my urge to run and her polite command. In that pause, my gaze drifted about 10 feet away. Standing near a tall marble column was a man. He was huge, built like a commercial refrigerator, and poured into a dark suit that probably cost more than my car. A clear, coiled wire ran from behind his ear, disappearing into his collar, an earpiece. His eyes were not still. They moved constantly, sweeping the room, the entrance, the bar, and then me. It was a steady, unnerving radar. I suddenly felt it, a low buzz in the air. This place had invisible fences, lines of power I could not see but could feel against my skin. "I am Lena," I murmured, sliding into the velvet chair opposite her. It was so plush it felt like it was trying to swallow me. "You are Lena," she replied. It was not a question. "How did you—" "You look like a Lena," she said, the corner of her mouth ticking up in a small smile. "And I heard the hostess confirm your reservation when you walked in. You were just too nervous to hear her." It was strange. The conversation was easy. She asked what I did, and I found myself telling her the absolute truth, without the polished edges I usually used. I am a housemaid. I clean apartments, 27 houses, mostly, for people who are never home. I held up my hands in the candlelight, showing her the raw, red skin around my nails. This is from a stubborn rust stain in a marble tub. I tried everything, lemon juice, baking soda, finally the heavy chemicals. "I see some grease, too," she observed, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She pointed to my left cuticle. A small flare of pride cut through my shame. "That," I admitted, "is from my brother Nico's bike chain. He's trying to get his mechanic's license, and I was trying to help him fix it last night." "And you are learning to code?" she asked. My jaw must have dropped. "How do you know that?" "I saw the app on your phone screen when you were checking the text message," she said, matter of fact. "A home care scheduler. You are building it." "I am trying to," I said, the words small and thin. "It is clumsy, just some basic stuff I learned online. I thought maybe I could make something better for scheduling clients." "Do not apologize for dirty hands, Lena," Ariana said, and her voice was suddenly firm, slicing through my embarrassment like a knife. "That is honest work. It is more real than 90% of the hands in this room. I promise you." The shift in the room was physical. It was not a sound, but a drop in pressure, as if all the oxygen had been suddenly pulled toward the entrance. The low hum of conversations at other tables dipped. Just for a beat. A man appeared at our table. He was tall, and his charcoal suit was so dark it seemed to drink the candlelight. His hair was thick, silver at the temples, and his face looked like it had been carved from hard, unyielding stone. He did not look at me. His gaze was locked entirely on the young woman in the wheelchair. The restaurant manager, a thin, bird-like man who had been hovering nervously near the kitchens, suddenly materialized at the man's elbow. He bowed his head, a gesture that was almost futile. "Don Mateo," the manager breathed, his voice tight with a mixture of reverence and fear. "Your table is ready, Miss Ariana." "She is with me, Father," Ariana said. Her voice, moments ago so warm, was now as hard and cold as his. "This is Lena. She is my guest." "Don." The word hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Don Mateo de Luca, my blood, which had been pounding in my ears, turned to ice water. This was not just a rich man. This was the man. The man whose name was a whisper in the Newark neighborhoods where I grew up. The man who owned logistics companies and sanitation routes, and according to the stories my father used to tell, the silence of half the politicians in New Jersey, the man who could make the newspapers explode with a story one day and make that same story disappear the next. I had not just sat at the wrong table. I had sat at the very worst table. I had wandered into the dragon's lair and sat down for dinner. The refrigerator-sized man near the column moved. He was not alone. Another man, just as large, peeled himself away from the bar. They did not approach, but they shifted, creating a loose, invisible perimeter around our table. The manager was visibly sweating now, his eyes darting to me with raw panic. "Miss," he started, his voice cracking. "I'm afraid I will need to see some identification." He thought I was a threat, or a plant, or just a piece of trash that had blown in and stuck to his expensive shoe. "You will do no such thing," Ariana snapped. Her voice did not get louder, but it became a razor. The manager flinched as if she had physically struck him. "I told you, she is my guest." She turned those clear, powerful gray eyes on me. I was frozen. My entire nervous system was screaming at me to run, to apologize, to crawl away and disappear, but I could not move. "It is all right, Lena," she said, her voice softening again. "Just for me. He just gets nervous." And in that moment, the terrifying, absurd situation became our first secret, our first bond. She, the protected princess in her tower, and I, the housemaid who had stumbled past the guards. She had claimed me. The bodyguards retreated, but their posture did not relax. Don Matteo DeLuca finally looked at me. His gaze was heavy. It felt physical, like a weight pressing on my chest. He was not looking at a person. He was calculating a variable, an unexpected number in an equation he had already solved. He sat down in the chair at the head of the table, a mountain settling into place. A waiter, his hands trembling slightly, rushed over to pour him water from a crystal bottle. "I should go," I whispered to Ariana. My voice was shaking, thin as thread. "My date. He is probably waiting." "He is not," Ariana said simply, her eyes on the waiter. "What?" "Your date, the black turtleneck. He arrived 5 minutes ago, looked around, and took a call at the bar. He just left with a woman in a red dress. He never even checked in with the hostess." She had seen all of that. While talking to me about coding and grease stains, she had been mapping the entire room, tracking every entrance and exit. "I should still go," I insisted, my pride stinging from the news. Though I was mostly relieved, I was off the hook for the bad blind date, but I was on a much sharper one. "Stay," Ariana said. "Just for the appetizer, please. It makes him behave." I looked from her to her father. Don Matteo was studying the wine list, ignoring me completely, but his presence radiated a cold, controlled power. Ariana was asking me for something, not just company. She was asking for a shield, me, a 27-year-old housemaid with bleach-stained hands, to shield her from this mountain. I told myself I would leave the second the appetizer plates were cleared. I would thank her. I would nod politely to the mountain in the suit, and I would run back to my side of the river, back to my real life. But Ariana's eyes held me. They were not just asking me to stay for her, they were asking me to stay for myself, to prove that I was not as scared as I looked. "Stay 10 more minutes," her gaze said. Just 10. Those 10 minutes, that one single stupid decision to stay for one plate of overpriced calamari, that was the precise moment my old life ended. That was where the new one began. That calamari was a mistake. It was crisp, light, and tasted of the sea. Nothing like the frozen rings I bought with food stamps. I ate it one slow, deliberate piece at a time, making it last. Each bite was a clock ticking down my 10 minutes of borrowed time. Don Matteo DeLuca ate with a heavy, precise silence. He did not look at me, but I felt his presence like a drop in temperature. He was assessing me. I knew it. He was a man who owned entire supply chains. He knew the cost and origin of every single thing in his world. Right now, that thing was me. I am the daughter of immigrants from Puerto Rico, raised in the shadow of Newark's smokestacks. My mother died when I was 12, a fever that burned through our small apartment and left a permanent cold spot. My father, he works the night shift at a plastics factory, his hands permanently stained with dye. He's a good man, a quiet man, worn down by gravity and time. I dropped out of community college after 3 semesters of accounting. The numbers made sense, but the tuition did not. I needed to work. I needed to send money home for my brother, Nico. He's the smart one, the one with the golden hands. He's finishing his apprenticeship as a mechanic, and I swear, that kid can hear what is wrong with an engine just by listening to it breathe. My job, cleaning the toilets and polishing the floors of the rich, was how I kept his hands clean enough to hold a wrench. So sitting here, in this velvet chair, with the candlelight catching the facets of the heavy crystal water glasses, it felt like a betrayal. I was a spy in the house of obscene wealth, and I was terrified that he would smell the bleach on me and throw me out. Or worse. I knew about worse. I had loved a cop once, or rather, I had loved a man who I thought was a struggling musician. He was an undercover detective. His name was Mark. He had kind eyes and a slow smile, and he had been building a case against a local crew running protection rackets. When the case blew open, it took half the neighborhood with it, and I was in the middle. I was questioned for hours. My words twisted and turned back on me. The cops wanted me to be their star witness. The crew wanted me to be their convenient scapegoat. I was trapped between 2 opposing sets of lies. In the end, I said nothing. I hid in my apartment for a week, and when I came out, Mark was gone, transferred to another precinct, and I had learned the single most valuable lesson of my life. Silence is survival. Silence pays the rent. This place, this restaurant glittered on the gentrified edge of the Hudson. These new glass towers scraped the sky, built on top of the old piers. They had steam-cleaned the brickwork and put in artisanal coffee shops. But if you stood on the corner after midnight, you could still smell it. The old river smell, that mix of salt, diesel, and something heavy, something rotten from the old days. The new smuggling routes just used better containers, fancier paperwork. I knew all about Ariana DeLuca. Everyone did. The papers had been full of it 2 years ago. The math and computer science prodigy from Columbia University, the bright, shining exception to the DeLuca name, then the car crash. A late-night spin on a winding road. The reports were vague, contradictory. One paper said it was a drunk driver. Another hinted at brake failure. The result was the same, a spinal cord injury. The whispers in my neighborhood were different. They said it was not an accident. They said it was a message sent to her father. Now she was officially not involved in her father's business. That was the press release line. But sitting here, watching her navigate her father's crushing silence, I knew that was a lie. You are never not involved when your name is DeLuca. And him, Don Mateo, his public face was everywhere. DeLuca Logistics, his trucks clogging the turnpike. DeLuca Hospitality, owning a dozen high-end restaurants just like this one. The DeLuca Family Foundation, funding children's hospitals and art galleries. He was a pillar of the community. But my father knew the other face. The invisible transport lines, the unions that never went on strike, the cargo that arrived at the port and disappeared before it ever hit an inspection ledger. He was the polite, functional, modern face of a very old, very organized kind of crime. Here was the thing, the secret joke that was making my stomach clench. I knew what his organization looked like on the inside. Every Tuesday and Friday, for the past 6 months, I had cleaned a penthouse on the Upper West Side. It was a 3-floor monument to beige carpets and glass walls, and it was always empty. The client was a shell corporation, Hudson Capital Ventures. But my eyes are not stupid. I am a housemaid. It is my job to see what people hide. I saw the way the files were kept, not alphabetically, but by some kind of code. I saw the extra military-grade lock on a closet that looked empty. I saw the faint outlines under the new carpet in the study, where a floor safe had been moved, and once, cleaning the home office, I saw a framed photo of a younger Don Mateo and a beaming teenage Ariana, tucked inside a desk drawer. I was already in their world. I just cleaned up their dirt. My roommate Rhea would have found this hilarious. Rhea, who sees life as one long, desperate stand-up comedy routine. It is how she survives. She was the one who signed me up for the dating app. "Lena, you need to change your life," she had insisted, waving her phone at me. "You cannot just scrub floors and write broken code forever. You need to meet someone normal, someone who does not smell like bleach or motor oil." So I had agreed. One date, one nice, boring analyst in a black turtleneck. "It will change your life. I am telling you," Rhea had prophesied. She was right. It was changing my life, just not in the way TikTok advertised. In Newark, there are 2 sets of laws. There are the cops, who you call when your car is stolen and who might show up 3 hours later. And then there are the people who run things, the men who stand on corners and settle disputes with a quiet word or a heavy hand. You do not call them, they find you. As a working woman, a daughter of immigrants, you learn to walk a very fine, very straight line between them. You see nothing, you hear nothing, you keep your head down, you survive. My dream was simple. I wanted to finish that coding class. I wanted to build my app, the one I had been sketching out on napkins, an app that would let women like me, cleaners and nannies and home health aides, set our own rates, find safe clients, and be independent. I wanted to build a new step on the ladder for myself, but I was terrified. terrified of being pulled into something dirty. Something dirtier than the rust stains and the grease, something that I could not just scrub away. And now, here I was. I had not just dipped a toe in, I had fallen headfirst into the deep end. That text message, that one stupid, mistaken text, was not a small tragedy. It was a pin being pulled from a grenade. I looked at Ariana. She was watching me, her gray eyes sharp with an intelligence that seemed to radiate from her. She knew I was not just a housemaid. She knew I was not supposed to be here. And the scariest part, she seemed glad that I was. So, Lina Morales. Don Mateo DeLuca's voice rumbled from across the table. It was smooth, like expensive whiskey, but it carried the weight of bedrock. He had not looked at me. Not really. Since he had sat down, he had analyzed the wine list, conferred with the waiter, and spoken to his daughter in quiet, clipped Italian. But now, with the appetizer plates cleared by a waiter whose hands were visibly shaking, his focus was total. It was like a high-powered spotlight pinning me to the velvet chair. "You are from Newark," he stated. It was not a question. "Yes," I managed to say. My throat was dry. "And what is it that you do, Lina?" he asked. There it was, the polite interrogation. He was a man who owned entire supply chains. He knew the cost and origin of every single thing in his world. Right now, that thing was me. I glanced at Ariana. She was watching her father, her face a cool, lovely mask. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Honesty. "I am a housemaid," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I clean apartments, residential and some commercial clients." I felt the need to add more, to prove I was not just a rag in a bucket, and I am learning to code a little, on the side. Don Mateo smiled. It was a slow, thin smile that did not reach his eyes. It was the smile of a man looking at a chess piece he had not placed, wondering how it got on the board, but knowing exactly how he would take it. It was the smile of someone who had already read the last page of my life story and was vaguely amused by my struggling in Chapter 3. "A housemaid," he repeated, the words rolling off his tongue. He made it sound quaint, like a blacksmith or a chimney sweep. How industrious. The air was so thick I felt I could not breathe it. I had to leave. I had stayed my 10 minutes. I put my borrowed napkin on the table. "Well, thank you so." I started, my chair scraping the floor as I began to stand. "Thank you for the appetizer, Ariana. Don Mateo, it was a pleasure. I really must be going." "Nonsense," Ariana said. Her voice cut in, bright and sharp as glass. I froze. "You have not had the main course. We ordered the ossobuco. You cannot possibly leave before the ossobuco. Is that not right, Father?" I sat back down, my body acting on its own accord. I was a puppet, and she had just yanked my string. Don Mateo's dark eyes narrowed, just slightly, at his daughter. I saw it then. I was not a guest. I was a weapon. I was a sudden, unexpected incident that she was using to push back, to assert control in the only way she could. I was the buffer, the random element in their silent, suffocating Cold War. "My father hates eating alone," Ariana continued, that sweet, brittle smile never leaving her face, "and I get so terribly bored just talking to him about logistics." Don Mateo's own smile did not waver, but the temperature around him dropped another 10 degrees. He signaled the waiter, a man who looked to be in his 50s, with a simple, regal lift of his chin. The waiter scurried over, his face pale. "Bring another glass," the Don commanded. "And the Barolo we discussed, my guest, will be staying for dinner." The ossobuco was agony. It was tender, the meat falling off the bone, the risotto underneath it creamy with saffron, and I tasted nothing but pure, unadulterated fear. The conversation was a bizarre tightrope walk. Ariana asked me questions about my coding app, her mind clearly and quickly grasping the logic I was fumbling with. She talked about database structures and user interfaces. Don Mateo talked about shipping logistics, the backup at the ports, the rising cost of fuel. It was an abstract, high-level discussion that I knew, instinctively, was also a performance for me. He was showing me the scale of his world. I just nodded and tried not to spill wine on the $1,000 tablecloth and prayed I would not be sick. Finally, after what felt like 4 hours, it was over. A small plate of biscotti sat untouched between us. "I have to go," I said. And this time, there was no room for argument in my voice. I was standing up. Ariana nodded, her mask back in place. "Thank you for staying, Lena. It was refreshing." I nodded at her, then at the man at the head of the table, Don Mateo. He simply inclined his head, a silent, imperious dismissal. I was a housemaid once more. I walked, my legs shaking, through the long, opulent dining room, the bodyguard at the column, the refrigerator in the suit, watched me every step of the way. I pushed through the heavy glass door, and the cold, damp Hudson air hit me like a physical slap. I gasped it in. Tasting freedom and diesel, I was alive. I had survived. I was halfway to the bus stop, fumbling in my secondhand purse for my wallet, when a black sedan pulled up smoothly to the curb beside me. It was not a limousine, just a plain, dark car, but it moved with an expensive silence. The back window slid down. "Miss Morales?" I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. It was the driver, not Don Mateo's driver, but the one I saw every Tuesday and Friday at the penthouse, the one belonging to Hudson Capital Ventures, a quiet man with graying hair named Sal, who usually just nodded at me and read his newspaper in the garage. He got out of the car. He was holding a brown leather satchel. A nice one. It looked expensive. "You forgot this," he said, his voice low and gravelly. He was not looking at me, but at a point just over my shoulder. "That is not mine," I said, my blood turning to ice. I had come with a plastic strap purse. This was designer. "It was under your chair," he insisted, his eyes still evasive. He pressed it into my hands. It was heavy. "Have a good night." Before I could say another word, he was back in the car. The sedan pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the flow of traffic. I stood there on the sidewalk, the city lights blurring around me, holding a bag that was not mine. I looked at the bag. I looked at the restaurant, its warm, glowing windows, a picture of a life I would never have. It had not been under my chair. I would have felt it. I would have seen it. It had been placed there, planted while I was in the bathroom. Maybe while I was distracted by the mountain at the head of the table, talking about saffron risotto. I had been set up. The bus ride back to Newark was the longest of my life. The leather bag sat on my lap like a bomb. My mind was racing. Who Don Mateo, it seemed. Clumsy for him. Too theatrical. Ariana, no. My gut rejected that idea instantly. Rhea was asleep, snoring softly in her room, the television muttering in the background. The apartment was quiet, smelling of the curry she had made for dinner. I locked the door. I double-checked the chain. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg, and I put the bag down. It smelled like new leather. I unzipped it. Inside, there was no makeup, no wallet, no keys. Just 2 items. First, a stack of papers, about 50 pages thick, held together with a binder clip. I pulled them out. They were shipping invoices, bills of lading. I recognized the letterhead immediately. Hudson Capital Ventures, the penthouse. But the invoices were wrong. They listed agricultural equipment and textiles being shipped to shell companies in Eastern Europe. But in the margins, someone had penciled in small, strange symbols, a triangle, a circle with a line through it, a small, 3-pronged fork. My breath caught. I had seen those symbols before, on a whiteboard in the study of the penthouse, the board I was always explicitly instructed to ignore, to never, ever wipe clean. Second, at the bottom of the bag was a small, black external hard drive, sleek and cold. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would break a rib. I knew, with the kind of certainty that sinks straight into your bones, that I should not plug this into my laptop. I knew I should take this bag, walk to the Passaic River and throw it in. My phone vibrated on the table, the sudden buzz making me yelp and jump back. The screen lit up, a blocked number. A new text message. It was simple. No punctuation. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, Pier 4, come alone. I stared at it, my fingers numb. My mind was a blank, white static. I typed back with trembling hands. Who is this? What do you want? The reply was instant. You know what? Bring the bag. Do not be late. And if you are, or if you call the police, say goodbye to Rhea. We know where she works. Rhea, they threatened Rhea. The fear, that cold, paralyzing fog, evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, white-hot rage that burned through my veins. This was not about me anymore. They had crossed a line. They had reached into my home, into my life, and put their dirty, invisible hands on the one person I had. My first instinct was to call the police, but I remembered Mark. I remembered the interrogation room. I remembered what happens when you are a housemaid from Newark accusing people who own buildings and drive in silent, black cars. The police do not protect you. They process you. My second instinct was to run, grab Rhea, grab Nico, and disappear. But where? They knew where she worked. They knew. They would find us. I looked at the hard drive. This was a message. This was a move in a game I did not understand. But by whom? Then I thought of Ariana, her sharp, intelligent eyes, her cold fury at her father, her exhaustion. My father is late again. Her strange, sudden insistence that I stay. My gut, the part of me that had survived Newark for 27 years, screamed one thing Ariana did not know about this. This was not her move. I found the restaurant's number online with shaky fingers. I dialed. I did not have a plan. I just had a feeling. La Spondadoro? A smooth voice answered. I need to speak to Ariana DeLuca, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It is Lena Morales. It is an emergency. A click, a long pause. I heard muffled, expensive-sounding music, then her voice, suddenly clear and alert. Lena, what is wrong? I cannot talk, I whispered, my eyes on Rhea's closed door. I got a package, a bag, from Sal, the driver at the penthouse, and I got a text message. They want me at Pier 4 tomorrow. They threatened my roommate. Silence on the line. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3. I could hear her breathing. Do not go to the pier, Ariana said. Her voice was low and intense, all traces of dinner party lightness gone. Do not go anywhere. Where are you? My apartment. Stay there. Lock your door. I am sending a car. It is not one of theirs. It is one of mine. It will be a gray Prius. It will be there in 45 minutes. Be outside. Meet me, she commanded. We need to talk. She hung up. I sank onto the kitchen chair, the adrenaline leaving me weak. I was a pawn. I was a tiny cog in a massive, grinding machine. This was a power struggle. A war between Don Mateo's system and someone else. Someone who wanted to break it. And that someone might be sitting right inside his own family. I looked at the hard drive. I looked at the threat on my phone. They had miscalculated. They thought I was just a housemaid. They thought I was scared. I was terrified, but my anger was bigger. They threatened Rhea. I grabbed my jacket. I was choosing Ariana. I was walking onto the tightrope high above the city, with nothing but concrete below. The car was a simple gray Prius, just as she had said. The driver was a woman my age, with a severe haircut, who did not speak. She drove me not to a penthouse, but to a 24-hour diner in Queens, a place smelling of stale grease and burnt coffee. It was my world, not hers. Ariana was in a booth in the back, tucked away by the kitchens. Her wheelchair was locked in place. A mug of black coffee sat untouched in front of her. She looked tired, her pale face stark in the harsh fluorescent light. I slid into the booth opposite her, placing the leather bag on the cracked vinyl seat between us. Thank you for coming, she said. They threatened my roommate, I said flatly. Who are they? Tell me what happened, she said, from the moment you left the restaurant. I told her, Sal, The bag, the invoices with the symbols, the hard drive, the text message. As I spoke, her face hardened. A cold, controlled anger settled in her eyes. "Sal," she said, almost to herself. "He does not work for my father. Not directly. He works for Vittorio Greco." "Who is that?" I asked. Ariana leaned forward as much as she could. "A caporregime, a branch manager. In corporate terms, he runs the port logistics. He is ambitious and sloppy. My father values discretion, the illusion of legitimacy. Vittorio only values profit." She tapped a long, pale finger on the leather bag. "For the past year, I have been looking. My father's organization is built on loyalty, but it is also built on his blind spots. He trusts Vittorio. I have been tracking the money. The real money, not the laundered funds from the restaurants and the foundations." She looked directly at me, her gray gaze pinning me to the seat. "I think Vittorio is skimming. More than skimming. I think he is running his own business through my father's channels. And I think he is getting ready to make a move. And this," I pointed to the bag, "this is his move." "No," Ariana said, a grin set to her mouth. "This is his mistake. He thinks I am the one investigating him. He planted this on you, thinking you were my friend. My accomplice. He saw us at dinner. He wanted to trap me or scare me by using you. I processed this, so he threatened Rhea to get to you." "Yes." "Night, but that hard drive, those invoices." My mind was racing. "They must be the proof you were looking for." "Exactly," she said. "He thinks he is setting a trap, but he just handed me the gun." It all clicked into place. A horrible, sharp, perfect picture. "And me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why me? Why did he pick me tonight?" Ariana looked down at her coffee cup. "Because you were perfect, Lena. You are invisible." I flinched, but she held up a hand. "I do not mean that as an insult," she said, her voice softening, but still steel. "I mean it as a fact. You are a housemaid. You are not in the system. You are not one of his men. You are not one of my fathers. You have access to places no one else does, like the penthouse. You are easy to scare, easy to threaten, easy to dispose of." The truth of it hit me. I was the reluctant heroine, the cliché, the damsel in distress, only this time the princess was the one in the wheelchair, and she was the one with the battle plan. "He used me as bait," I said, the anger returning, hot and sour. "Yes," Ariana said. "He did. The question is, what do we do now? He expects you at Pier 4 in a few hours. He expects you to be terrified. He expects me to panic and make a mistake." I looked at the hard drive. I thought of Rhea, sleeping, safe for now. I thought of the condescending smile on Don Matteo's face. "He's right about one thing," I said, sliding the leather bag across the table toward her. "I am terrified." I met her gaze, but I am also really, really angry. "So, you have the gun. How do we use it?" A slow smile spread across Ariana's face. It was the first real, unguarded smile I had seen from her. It was beautiful, and it was terrifying. "We use it," she said, "by being exactly what he thinks we are not. We do not panic. We plan." The plan was born in the harsh fluorescent light of that 24-hour diner, over burned coffee that tasted like my morning-after regrets. "He thinks you are bait, Lena," Ariana said, her voice a low, intense hum. "So, you will be bait, but you will be my bait." Her plan was both terrifying and simple. Vittorio Greco wanted the bag and the hard drive. He assumed I was a scared, ignorant delivery girl. We would not disabuse him of that notion. Not yet, but first, we needed more. We needed everything. "My Tuesday cleaning," I said, my mind racing. "At the penthouse, I am still scheduled." "Exactly," Ariana said. She reached into her own bag and pulled out a device so small I almost missed it. It looked like a tiny, black flash drive, the kind they give away at trade shows. "This is an audio recorder. The battery lasts for 72 hours. Vittorio is arrogant. He talks when he thinks the help cannot hear him. He talks when he thinks no one understands the business. You are the help. The plan was this: I would go to the penthouse. I would not plant the hard drive from the bag. Ariana already had that, and she was going to spend the night cracking its encryption. I would plant the recorder. I would use the invisibility of my job, the absolute trust people place in the woman who cleans their toilets, to get close. I would photograph the rest of those coded symbols on the whiteboard. I would be a controlled spy. Who are we spying on? I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. Vittorio Greco, she confirmed. He's my father's. Let us call him a regional manager. He runs the ports. He is ruthless, but he likes to wrap himself in this hypocritical shell of business ethics. He believes he is a clean businessman. He's just a trafficker who wears a better suit. Her face tightened, a flicker of real pain crossing her features. And he does not work alone. He works with my cousin, Savina. Your cousin? Savina DeLuca. She runs the DeLuca Family Foundation, the charity galas, the hospital wings. She is the face of our legitimacy. She is the one who takes the dirty money from men like Vittorio and makes it clean. She stared into her coffee. She smiles for the cameras, and she is very, very close to Vittorio. She has always been jealous of my position with my father. I went to the penthouse that Tuesday. My stomach was a knot of acid. The usual driver, Sal, the one who had given me the bag, was gone. In his place was a new man, a thick slab of muscle named Petro, who did not say a single word to me the entire drive. He just watched me in the rearview mirror. I was expecting the apartment to be empty, as usual. It was not. Don Matteo DeLuca was standing in the living room, looking out the glass wall, a cup of espresso in his hand. I froze at the doorway, my cleaning cart a useless shield. Miss Morales, so, he rumbled, without turning around. Come in. This was not a cleaning visit. This was an ambush. I felt the tiny recorder in my pocket, suddenly as heavy as a brick. Don DeLuca, I stammered. I was not told you would be here. I am a man of whim, he said, finally turning. His eyes swept over me, cold and analytical. He was calculating. He knew I had been with his daughter that night. I trust your brother's apprenticeship is going well, Nico. Is it not? My blood ran cold. He knew Nico's name. It was not a question. It was a statement. I know where you live. I know who you love. He's doing well, thank you, I said, my voice stiff. Good, good. He wandered the room as I pretended to dust a table that was already spotless. My daughter, Ariana, he said, his voice taking on a softer, but no less dangerous, tone. She is fragile. Since her accident, she has a good heart, but she does not know what is good for her. She trusts people she should not. He paused, looking at a piece of abstract art. She needs protection, Lena, from the world, from herself. A father's duty is to keep his family safe, whatever the cost. I saw it then, with terrifying clarity. Ariana was not just his daughter, she was his most prized possession. This penthouse, the bodyguards, the suffocating wealth. It was not a home. It was a cage, a beautiful, opulent, golden cage he had built to keep her safe and to keep her his. His love was pathological. It was the love of a collector for a priceless, breakable artifact, and he saw me as a smudge of dirt on the glass. I managed to plant the recorder. I hid it with shaking hands underneath the heavy mahogany desk in the study, sticking it to the underside with a piece of double-sided tape from my cleaning kit. I got through the rest of the 3 hours, cleaning under his silent, watchful gaze, and I left, my nerves shredded. I got home that night, the adrenaline finally draining, leaving me exhausted and sick. Ria was at the kitchen table. She was not watching television. She was just sitting in the dark, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Ria, what is wrong? She looked up, and her face was pale, her usual sarcastic spark completely gone. Some guy stopped me, she whispered. when I was leaving my nursing class. A big man, in a suit. My stomach dropped to the floor. What did he say? He did not hurt me, she said, her voice trembling. He just stood in my way. He knew my name, and he said to give you a message. What message? He said, your friend Lena is a smart girl. She knows how to be quiet. She learned that lesson once before. She should stay quiet. I felt the room tilt. She learned that lesson once before. They knew about Mark. They had dug into my past. They knew my deepest wound. I sat down, my legs giving out. The fear was a cold, metallic taste in my mouth. I had brought this into her life. This was my fault. I looked at Rhea, at her terrified, trusting face. I had to compartmentalize. I had to swallow this terror. I forced a laugh. It sounded brittle and fake, even to me. See, they think I am smart. High praise. Right. Rhea did not laugh. I took the fear, the white-hot panic, and I did what I had learned to do. I mentally named it, I acknowledged it, and then I folded it up, neat and tidy like a freshly laundered napkin, and I tucked it away in a deep pocket in my mind. It was still there. It was heavy, but it was not in my hands anymore. I could not stay in the apartment. I felt like the walls were listening. I called Ariana's private car, the gray Prius, and it met me on a dark street corner 2 blocks away. The silent driver took me to Ariana's real apartment, not the penthouse, not the family mansion, but a smaller, accessible condo she kept in the city, her one small bastion of independence. We sat on her balcony. It was cold, and the wind off the river was sharp. The city was a glittering, indifferent map of lights below us. Rhea is safe for now, Ariana said, her voice tight with anger. I put a car on her, one of my people. She will not be alone. This is my fault, Lena. No, I said, pulling my thin jacket tighter. I chose to stay for the osso buco. I chose to meet you at the diner. This is my choice. We were quiet for a long time, watching the distant planes line up for landing at Newark. He told me I was fragile, I said. Ariana snorted, a bitter, sharp sound. He thinks I'm made of glass. He thinks this. She slapped the armrest of her chair. Made me weak. She looked out at the river, her profile sharp and beautiful against the skyline. It was not an accident, the crash. I waited. The wind whistled around the corner of the building. It was too precise, she said, her voice flat, devoid of self-pity. The angle of the impact, the way the truck hit the rear axle. It was not a random drunk. It was physics. Just enough to sever the T10. Just enough to paralyze me. Not enough to kill me. Vittorio, I whispered, or Savina, or both. A message to my father. A way to manage me. To remind him that everyone, even his prized daughter, is breakable. She turned her head, and her gray eyes were fierce, burning with a cold fire. Do not look at me with pity, Lena. I do not need a hero. I do not need you to save me. I need you to stand with me. There is a difference. I thought about earlier, when her driver had dropped us off. The curb cut at the corner was cracked, a jagged lip of concrete. I had tried to push her chair over it, putting my shoulder into it, trying to just heave her across like a piece of cargo. She had slapped my hand away, her voice sharp. Stop, you are fighting me, not helping me. Do not just push, watch. She showed me how to tilt the chair back, how to use leverage, how to pop the front casters over the lip with a small, precise movement. It was not about brute force. It was about balance. It was physics. She was not fragile. She was strong. I was the one who had been clumsy, blinded by my own assumptions. She was teaching me how to see her, not the chair. Friday, my next cleaning day at the penthouse. This was the day. I had to retrieve the recorder and, using a decoy hard drive Ariana had given me, swap it with the one in the leather bag, which I would then find and give to Sal's replacement. I was in the study. My heart was a bird trapped in my chest. I had just retrieved the recorder from under the desk, my fingers fumbling with the adhesive. I was polishing the large, gilt-framed mirror that hung on the wall, using the motion to hide what I was doing. The private elevator chimed. My blood stopped. I was not supposed to be seen in the study. I was supposed to be in the kitchen. It was not Don Matteo. It was Vittorio Greco. He was early. Sal's replacement, Petro. Must have told him my schedule. And he was not alone. Savina, her cousin, was with him. She looked elegant, her blonde hair pulled back, her face a mask of bored aristocracy. I froze. I could not run. I could not hide, so I did the only thing I could. I became invisible. I turned back to the mirror and I kept polishing. My motions slow and steady. My back to them, I was furniture. I was no one. They ignored me. Whoa, the old man is sniffing around, Vittorio snapped. He was not the smooth businessman Arianna had described. His voice was rough, angry. He's squeezing the port, asking questions. He is sentimental, Savina said, her voice like ice chips. He's worried about his precious, broken daughter. He's paranoid. He should be worried about this next shipment, Vittorio growled. He paced to the window. It is not textiles this time. Savina. The buyers are specific. This shipment is people. High value. We cannot afford a single delay. A shipment of people. The words did not register at first. They were just sounds. Then they hit me. Human trafficking, not drugs, not guns, people. The polishing cloth in my hand trembled. The blood was not rushing. It was screaming in my ears, a high-pitched whistle. Vittorio turned. He saw me, his eyes, cold and dark, narrowed. He had not realized I was in the room. You, he snapped, pointing at me. Get out, we are finished in here. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I grabbed my cleaning cart and I fled, my legs shaking so badly I almost fell. I met Arianna at the diner 2 hours later. I was shaking so hard I spilled coffee all over the table. I told her what I had heard. She did not cry. She did not yell. She just sat there, her hands flat on the table, and she began to shake. It was not a small tremor. It was a deep, silent, violent rage that vibrated through her entire body. People, she whispered, her voice unrecognizable. He's using my father's ships. He's using my father's name to move people. This changed everything. This was not about money. This was not about skimming profits. The hard drive, Arianna said, her eyes snapping up to meet mine, her gaze terrifyingly clear. It is not just numbers. It must be the manifests, the ship's name, the arrival dates. We have to go to the police, I said, the words tasting like ash. I hated cops, but this... No, Arianna said, her voice absolute. You heard him. He squeezed the port. That means he has officials on his payroll. We cannot go to the police. They are compromised. They will make the evidence, and us disappear. Then what do we do? I cried. We cannot just let a ship full of people arrive. We do not, she said. We have to save them. And to do that, we have to get the proof to someone who cannot be bought, someone outside the system entirely. I knew who. The memory of Mark was a scar, a place in my past I never touched. But he was not a cop anymore. He was an investigative reporter for a national paper, the kind of reporter who lived to destroy men like Vittorio Greco. I walked out of the diner and found a payphone on the corner. My hands were slick with sweat as I dialed the number I still knew by heart. It rang 3 times. Mark, his voice said. He sounded older. Lena. He was shocked. I could hear him sit up straight in his chair. I do not have time, Mark, I said, my voice flat and cold. I have a story, a big one, the DeLuca organization, human trafficking. I have proof, real, hard proof. He was silent for a second. Lena, where are you? Are you safe? That does not matter, I said. This is insurance. I am going to send a password-protected file to your private email. If you do not hear from me by Monday morning, 10 o'clock sharp, you publish it. You publish all of it. Do you understand me? Lena, what are you getting into? Do you understand me? I yelled, my voice cracking. Yes, he said, his voice grim. "I understand. Be careful, Lena." I hung up the phone. I had just set a dead man's switch. My own life was now the collateral. We were separated, but we were in motion. Ariana, analyzing the data from the hard drive and the audio recorder, found the ship's name and its arrival window. But Don Mateo felt the betrayal. He smelled the smoke. He felt his daughter pulling away into a world he could not control. He did the only thing he knew how to do. He tightened the cage. On Monday morning, I got a call from the Penthouse Management Company. "Your services are no longer required at the Hudson Capital Ventures property," a bland voice informed me. "The client has terminated the contract." I was banned, fired, cut off. At the same time, Ariana called me from a blocked number, her voice a frantic whisper. "He moved me. My father. He's taking me to the family estate. He took my laptop. He took my car. He says it is for my protection. Lena, he is imprisoning me." I was locked out. She was locked in. The clock was ticking. The ship was due in less than 48 hours. The ban was supposed to stop me. It was supposed to sever the link, send me running back to Newark, back to my life of silence and bleach. But all it did was make me realize the only way in was to stop being the invisible housemaid. I had to find a new door. Pier 4 was not a pier. It was a canyon of steel, and the fog rolling off the Hudson was so thick it muffled the sound of the city. It smelled of rust and cold salt water. The halogen lights cut weak, yellow holes in the dark, making the stacks of shipping containers look like the walls of a maze. I pushed Ariana's wheelchair over the cracked asphalt, the small front wheels jarring on the uneven ground. Her silent driver in the gray Prius had dropped us half a mile away, and we had slipped in through a gap in the fence Ariana knew about. She had gotten out of her father's estate by calling the one person he did not control, the one driver loyal only to her. She was not letting me do this alone. "Vittorio thinks he is meeting a buyer for the servers," she whispered, her voice tight, vibrating in the cold air. "The ship with the people is due at Pier 3, but he is moving the operational proof here first, Box 47B. We had the equipment, tiny, button-sized cameras with magnetic backs and a small, powerful audio transmitter. We moved like ghosts. I was the housemaid, invisible by trade, and she was the woman in the wheelchair, invisible by assumption. No one looks twice. We planted the cameras near the junction box, hidden in the shadows of the massive cranes. Mark, my ex-boyfriend, the reporter, was parked 3 blocks away in a plain news van, waiting for our signal to go live. This was our insurance. We found a deep shadow between 2 stacks of refrigerated containers. The low, electric hum of their generators masked the sound of our breathing. Then, headlights cut through the fog, 2 black sports utility vehicles, their engines too quiet. They parked. Vittorio Greco got out, flanked by 2 men built like Petro, all thick necks and heavy coats, and with him, wrapped in a dark, expensive coat, was Savina, Ariana's cousin. Her face was pale and tight with something. Excitement or fear. Vittorio was nervous. He paced the wet ground. He snapped at Savina, who just watched him with cold eyes. He was waiting. He stopped. He tilted his head, listening. Then he walked straight to the 47B junction box. He was early. He reached up, his gloved fingers brushing the cold metal. He found it. The camera. He ripped it from the junction box and stared at it in his palm. "We have company," he snarled. His men fanned out. Their professionalism was terrifying. One of them found us. It was Petro, the man from the penthouse, his eyes wide with surprise, then cold with recognition. He did not hesitate. He grabbed the handles of Ariana's chair, ripping it from my grasp, and shoved her out into the harsh yellow light. "Well, well," Vittorio said, his voice a low, dangerous purr. He walked toward us, dangling the small camera from his fingers, the little cripple and her cleaning lady, playing spies. I lunged, but Petro caught me, his arm locking across my chest like a steel bar. I was trapped. Vittorio strode over to Ariana. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. "You should have stayed in your pretty golden cage, principessa." He grabbed the armrest of her chair, and with one sudden, violent motion, he yanked it sideways. Ariana cried out as the chair tipped, spilling her onto the cold, oily pavement. "No!" I screamed. I struggled against Petro's grip, but he was immovable. Vittorio crouched beside her, his back to me. "Did you really think I would not know it was you?" he whispered, but the sound carried in the damp air. "Snooping, always snooping, just like before. You should have learned your lesson from that accident, T." He smiled, a flash of white teeth in the dark. That truck. It was such a delicate touch, a perfect angle, just enough pressure. It was a confession. My blood was not just screaming in my ears, it was fire. Petro was holding me, but he was watching his boss, a small smile on his face. I did what I do every day. I work. I use my tools. My cleaning cart was a heavy-duty backpack I had carried in. I stomped down hard on Petro's instep with the heel of my work boot. He grunted, his grip loosening for just a second. It was all I needed. I spun inside his hold, unzipping the bag at my feet. I grabbed the aerosol can of industrial-strength glass cleaner. It was not the watered-down stuff. This was the high ammonia mix. I aimed it directly at his face and pressed the nozzle. He howled, a high, strangled sound, clawing at his eyes as the chemicals hit. I did not wait. I ran to the wall of the nearest warehouse. I saw what I needed, exactly where Ariana's map had said it would be. The red fire extinguisher. I grabbed it, pulled the pin, and aimed it not at them, but at the ground between us. I squeezed the handle. A massive, choking cloud of white carbon dioxide foam exploded into the night. It was an instant smokescreen, a wall of blinding, cold fog. "Ariana!" I yelled, plunging into the cloud. "The forklift!" she yelled back. I heard her coughing from the ground. The horn distracted them. I saw the yellow outline of a parked forklift. I scrambled into the seat. The key was in the ignition. They always leave the keys. I jammed my hand onto the center of the steering wheel, a deafening, repetitive beep, 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 split the night, echoing off the steel walls. Misdirection. I jumped down, found Ariana in the chaos, and scooped her up. She was lighter than I expected, all sharp angles and tense muscle. I got her back into her chair just as the foam began to settle. "The container," she coughed, pointing to a large blue shipping container marked 47C. "He has the proof in there, the ledgers, the black boxes." I ran to it. It was locked with a heavy-duty padlock. I looked at the fire extinguisher in my hand. Useless. I looked around, frantic. My eyes landed on a long, steel cargo hook hanging on a nearby rack. I grabbed it, wedged the point into the shackle of the lock, and put every ounce of my body weight on it, using the hook as a lever. The metal shrieked. It snapped. I tore the heavy doors open. I expected to find people. I expected terrified faces. It was an office. Servers hummed on metal racks. A desk was bolted to the floor. Open ledgers, small, black server drives. This was the brain. This was the hard proof Mark needed. My phone, the burner Ariana had given me, buzzed in my pocket. A text from her, sitting 20 feet away. "Wrong pier." He switched it. "Ship is at Pier 3. This is a decoy. He wanted us to find this." I stared at the servers. This was the evidence. This would stop him. But Pier 3, a ship full of people. I had to choose, the evidence or the lives. I ran out. Ariana was waiting, her face grim in the thinning fog. She already knew my answer. "People," I choked out. She nodded. One sharp, clear nod. She trusted my choice. "Pier 3 is a half-mile south," she said, her voice rapid fire. She was already tapping on her own burner phone. "The east gate is locked. There is a breach in the fence by the rail spur. I have the port map in my head. I can guide us. Go." Going somewhere. Vittorio's voice cut through the fog. He was standing there, his suit covered in white extinguisher foam, his hair wild. Petro was behind him, wiping his red, streaming eyes with a rag. Savina was gone. Vittorio had a gun, a small, black, efficient-looking pistol. He aimed it directly at Ariana's chest. "You two have been a profound disappointment." I moved without thinking. I stepped directly in front of the wheelchair. "No." "How touching," Greco sneered. "The help, willing to die for the princess." Vittorio. A new voice. A voice like gravel and authority. A voice that carried the weight of the entire city. Don Matteo De Luca stepped out of the shadows. He was flanked by two of his own men, the refrigerators from the restaurant. He was not aiming a gun. He did not need to. "Father," Ariana whispered. She was stunned. "You are sloppy, Vittorio," Don Matteo said. His voice was not loud, but it was shaking with a cold, contained rage. "You used my ships. You used my name. For this. Filth." "I made you rich, old man," Vittorio snarled, but his gun hand was shaking. He was afraid of him. "And you," the Don said, his dark eyes landing on me. The gaze was complex. It was not just anger. It was confusion. It was calculation, an equation he could not solve. He had followed his daughter, or me, or both. He had learned the truth. "She is right," a new voice yelled. "Savina." She was standing on a metal catwalk above us, and her phone was out, its screen glowing. "It is all over. Vittorio, the feed is live. The whole world is watching." My stomach dropped. I looked at Ariana. She was staring up at her cousin, her face pale with betrayal. "Savina, what are you—" "She is not streaming to Mark," I realized aloud. "She is streaming to him." I pointed at Greco. "She was setting you up, too. She wanted you gone so she could take over the foundation and the port. She sold you out." Greco looked up at Savina, his face a mask of disbelief, then murderous rage. He lifted his gun toward her. A shot exploded. The sound was deafening, swallowed by the steel canyon. It was not Greco. It was Don Matteo. He had not shot Greco. He had shot the ground at his feet. Enough. "The people," I whispered to Ariana. "Pier 3. As Greco and Don Matteo faced off, a standoff of old power and new, Ariana nodded. "Go. Now." I ran. I did not look back. I sprinted toward the south gate, toward Pier 3. Ariana was on her phone, her voice low and urgent. "Mark, Pier 3. The shipment is at Pier 3. I'm sending coordinates. Get the police here. Get everyone here." I found the breach in the fence. Pier 3 was dark, but I heard a low murmur. I saw a ship, dark and silent, tied to the dock. A container was being lifted by a crane. I was just one person. What could I do? Then I saw them. Headlights, not police, a collection of vehicles, fishing boats pulling up to the dock, their spotlights hitting the deck, taxicabs, their off-duty lights on, pulling up to the gate, a few long-haul trucks. Ariana had not just called Mark. She had called the network, the drivers, the longshoremen, the fishermen, the real people of the river, the ones Don Matteo did not own. I ran to the container that was sitting on the dock. I still had the cargo hook. I broke the lock. The doors opened. It was full of people. Dozens of terrified, half-starved faces staring back at me in the dark. "It is okay," I said, my voice breaking. "You are safe. We are getting you out." Then, the sirens. Dozens of them. Red and blue lights flooded the pier, painting the scene in a flashing, chaotic tableau. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, Mark's call, and the live stream had forced their hand. I ran back. I had to get to Ariana. Pier 4 was swarmed. Agents were shouting. "Federal agents, hands in the air." I saw Greco on his knees, hands cuffed. I saw Savina crying as two agents led her away from the catwalk. And I saw Don Matteo. He was standing by his daughter. He was not in cuffs. Not yet. An agent was talking to him, respectfully. He saw me, looked at me, then at Ariana. His face was a ruin of pride and pain. He knew what was coming. He knew the live stream, the arrival of the federal agents, his presence here. It was the end of his reign. He did one last thing. He leaned down. his hands surprisingly gentle. And he pushed Ariana's wheelchair. He pushed her away from himself, away from the circle of agents, and toward me. He pushed her to safety. "Take care of my daughter," he said to me, his voice a low command. Then he turned, straightened his suit jacket, and held his hands out for the federal agents. It was his final answer. He loved his daughter enough to let her go, and to pay the price for his own sins. The fog was thick with the smell of salt and smoke. The red and blue lights painted the puddles on the asphalt. I ran to Ariana and knelt beside her chair. She was shaking, her face wet with tears, but her eyes were clear. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you," I said, my voice thick. "I am just the help." I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. She buried her face in my shoulder. She did not feel like a boss, or a princess, or a DeLuca. She just felt like Ariana, and I held her, the housemaid and the heiress, two women who had sat at the wrong table and found the only right thing in the world, all as the empire collapsed around us. The noise that followed was deafening, and it did not stop for weeks. The press, hungry for a simple story, found ours impossible to digest. It was too complicated. It was a mafia story, a human trafficking story, a corporate corruption story, and, most bizarrely to them, a love story. They could not find a simple box to put us in, so they invented one for me. I was not Lena Morales, daughter of a factory worker. I was the housemaid whistleblower. The name was ridiculous. It made me sound like a children's cartoon character, a superhero who fought grime and crime with a feather duster and a secret decoder ring. My grainy, 6-year-old community college identification photo was plastered everywhere. I hated it. I hated leaving our new apartment. The flashbulbs felt like tiny explosions, and the reporters shouted questions that felt like accusations. Social media was a different kind of poison. We became a meme, a picture of me, caught by a paparazzo buying milk, next to a picture of Ariana testifying. The caption read, "Get you a girl who can do both." I wanted to scrub my own name from the internet. Ariana, however, was forged in the fire of public opinion. She knew it was a weapon. "It is leverage, Lena," she told me one night, her voice firm as she navigated the chaos of her new life. "It is noise, and right now, noise is power. Do not let them waste it." She was right. While I hid from the cameras, she directed them. We, or rather she, using the platform they had built for us, started a fund for the survivors of Pier 3, the housemaid whistleblower tagline, which I despised, raised over $500,000 in 2 weeks. I learned to hate the noise a little less. Ariana was called to testify. She rolled into the congressional hearing room in Washington, not as a victim, but as an expert. The cameras zoomed in on her hands, on the wheels of her chair, on the pale, beautiful face they expected to see crack with emotion. They wanted the brave, paralyzed heiress. She gave them something else entirely. She was a mathematician. She was precise, cold, and utterly brilliant. She did not just give them the names of Greco and Savina. She gave them the system. She unspooled the complex web of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and encrypted logistics that allowed her father's legitimate business to be a highway for the illegitimate. She showed them how the legal and illegal worlds were not separate, but were woven together like a single, corrupt tapestry. One senator, a man with silver hair and a deeply patronizing tone, leaned into his microphone. "Miss DeLuca," he said, his voice dripping with false empathy, "you are a true American hero, a profile in courage." Ariana did not smile. She looked at him, and the entire massive room went silent. "I am not a hero, Senator," she said, her voice cutting through the hushed air. "I am a mathematician who was ignored, and I am a witness to a crime. The people who were pulled off that ship, they are the survivors. This system." She tapped the hard drive sitting on the witness table. "Is the criminal? I do not need heroes. I need teammates. I need people to finally do their jobs." They had come to see a fragile girl in a wheelchair. They found a queen on her throne. Don Mateo's legal battle was a quieter, more expensive affair. His lawyers were the best in the country. Predators in $3,000 suits, they spun a masterful narrative. Don Matteo De Luca, they argued, was a titan of industry, a philanthropist, a father. He was the victim of a deep, cancerous betrayal by a greedy subordinate, Vittorio Greco, and his own treacherous, mentally unstable niece, Savina. They argued with straight faces at the pier that night only to save his beloved daughter. It was a brilliant defense. It was almost believable. Ariana was subpoenaed. She visited him once, in the sterile, non-contact visiting room of the Federal Detention Center. She sat opposite him, the thick glass between them reflecting her calm face. I do not know what they said. I saw her writing him a letter later that night, her hand precise and steady, the pen scratching in the quiet of our new living room. I asked her what it said. "The truth," she replied. "I wrote, 'I will not lie for you. Father, I will not perjure myself. I will tell the court what I found, and I will tell them what you did, both the good and the bad. You taught me to value strength. I will honor that.'" She sent it. He did not write back for a very long time. We had to build a new life from the wreckage. Ria was safe. The fear had finally left her eyes, though it was replaced by a harder, more cynical humor. She re-enrolled in her nursing program, and I had a feeling she would be the kind of nurse who terrified doctors and saved patients. My brother, Nico, took the small amount of money I pressed into his hand, consulting fees. I called it and finally opened his own small shop, Morales Motors. It was just 2 bays in a rented garage in Newark, but it was his. Ariana and I, we found a place. We could not stay in her condo, and I could not stay in my apartment. We rented a simple, ground-floor apartment in a quiet neighborhood, far from the glass towers and the sirens. It had wide doorways and hardwood floors. We hired a contractor to tear out the kitchen, replacing the counters with lower ones and a sink you could roll under. We built a ramp to the small back patio ourselves, arguing for 2 days about the angle of the incline and the torque of the screws. It was our first joint project. We painted the walls a warm, quiet white. We bought a cheap record player at a thrift store, and I introduced her to the salsa music my father used to play, the sound of my childhood. Our new normal was small. It was quiet. It smelled like fresh paint and Goya beans, and it was the safest I had ever felt. It was not perfect. The adrenaline faded, and the trauma settled in like a low-grade fever. We fought. We had one terrible, screaming fight. Standing, or rather, me standing, her wheeling in tight, angry circles in our small living room about the pier. "You ran," I accused her, my voice raw, the memory of it still sickening. "You told me to go, and I ran straight at a man with a gun. You put me at risk. Ariana." She stopped, her face white with a fury that matched my own. "You put me at risk," she shot back. "You stood in front of me. You made that choice for me. You treated me like I was fragile, like I was the glass he broke. Did you think I could not take a bullet? You took away my choice. Lena, you treated me like a child." It was the ugliest night we had. It was the night we had to learn the language of apology, the hard, clumsy grammar of "I am sorry I scared you," and "I am sorry I overstepped." We had to find the line between risking our lives for justice and just staying alive for each other. The Housemaid whistleblower fame had one lasting benefit, a prestigious tech academy, the kind I used to scrub the floors of, offered me a full scholarship. In recognition of your civic courage and technical aptitude, the letter said, I accepted. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. The math was dense, the logic unforgiving, but I worked. Ariana would sit with me at night, our new, low kitchen table covered in my notes, and she would explain complex algorithms with a patience that stunned me. "You are thinking like a cleaner," she said one night, gently tapping my notebook. "You are trying to scrub the problem that is already there. You need to think like an architect. Build a new room." With her as my consultant, my old clumsy app took shape. I resurrected it. But it was not just a scheduler. It was clean slate, a platform to hire immigrant and working-class women, to pay them a living wage, to certify them, to treat them as the professionals they were, not just the help. A clean house, built on clean wages. Ariana was the first investor. The system ground on. Vittorio Greco was found guilty on all counts, facing a life sentence. He took a deal and testified against the corrupt port officials and the buyers. Savina, facing overwhelming evidence from her own live stream, pleaded guilty to money laundering and conspiracy. Her clean charity image ruined forever. Several officers at the port were indicted. But it was not a clean victory. The network did not disappear. It just shifted. One branch was cut, but the root system was still there, deep in the dark, fertile soil of the city. It was a lesson: you do not kill a system. You just wound it, and you hope you wounded it enough to matter. Don Mateo's trial ended in a conviction. Not for trafficking, his lawyers had successfully insulated him from that, but for racketeering, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The sentence was 15 years. The empire was broken, its assets seized or frozen. About a month after he was transferred to a federal prison upstate, a letter arrived. It was addressed to me. In his heavy, dark script, I opened it with trembling hands. It was short. Lina Morales, it began. I built a cage for my daughter. I thought it was to keep the world out. I was wrong. It was to keep her in. You did not just open the door. You showed her she had the key all along. I ask you for one thing. Take care of her. Not as I wanted, as she wants. It was not signed with his name. It was just a father. It was the only apology he knew how to give. One night, about 6 months after the pier, Ariana made a reservation online. Put on that dress, she said, her eyes sparkling. The one that is too big for you. She was wearing a simple forest green sweater, almost identical to the one she had worn that first night. We went back to La Spondadoro. We were early. We got the right table this time. The one in the corner, the one I had been supposed to go to, where the nice analyst in the black turtleneck never showed. We invited the manager over, the thin, bird-like man who had trembled in front of us. He almost fainted when he saw us. We ordered a bottle of his most expensive wine. We tipped him 100%. We were closing the loop. On the drive home, in our own car, a second-hand van with a good hydraulic lift, I realized what happiness was. It was not a penthouse or a fancy meal. It was a short cleaning schedule, because my app was finally working. It was the smooth, satisfying thump of her chair rolling over the ramp we built. It was the right to sit in the same room with her, in total silence, reading a book and knowing we were both completely, perfectly safe. We did not get married, not in a church. We did not get married at all, not in the legal sense. We had a promise. We threw a party in the small backyard of our apartment, the one with the cracked concrete patio that we had scrubbed clean. We strung up what felt like 1,000 tiny string lights, making a canopy of fake stars. Rhea, who was now acing her anatomy classes, made 3 massive coconut flans, her mother's recipe, which wobbled precariously on the folding table. Nico came, his hands finely, proudly stained with his own grease, and he brought his new girlfriend, who was shy and smart and did not laugh at any of my jokes, which I respected. The woman who drove Ariana's Prius, whose name I learned was Elena, even came and stood in the back, sipping a beer and looking almost relaxed. There was no aisle. There was no priest. We just stood on the little ramp we had built, the ramp that led to the patio, and we read what we had written. I went first, my voice shaking, the paper rattling in my hand. I talked about bleach and grease and how I had spent my life trying to scrub away the world, only to find out that the world was where she lived. Then she read hers. She did not use paper. She just spoke, her clear, strong voice cutting through the salsa music. She said she had spent her life calculating angles, finding the most efficient path, but that I was an irrational variable, a beautiful, clumsy number that had crashed her entire equation and built a better one. We did not exchange rings. We made one. Simple vow. I will walk beside you. We said our voices together. Not in front of you, not behind you. And then Rhea, who was already 2 beers in, yelled, "Okay, now kiss." So we did. And it was not a movie kiss. It was a real kiss, a little clumsy, a little long, and it tasted like salt in her cherry lip balm. Life settled. It became normal, or our version of it. I graduated. I was no longer Lena Morales, the housemaid. I was Lena Morales, co-founder and chief executive officer of Clean Slate. My app, our app, had launched. We had over 200 women on our payroll in the first 6 months, all earning a living wage, all fully insured, all treated as the skilled professionals they were. I was not just creating schedules. I was building a new ladder. Ariana, in between managing the investments for the Survivors Fund and running our little household with terrifying efficiency, went back to her first love. She took a part-time teaching position at her alma mater, Columbia University. She was not a math professor. She was teaching accessibility design to a new generation of architects and engineers. I am teaching them, she told me, how to build a world that actually fits everyone, not one where we have to apologize for our own shape. The twist, the final little piece of the puzzle, came in a box. After Don Mateo's conviction was finalized, his lawyers sent over a single, small box of Ariana's personal effects from the old mansion, things he had kept in his private study. At the bottom, underneath old ballet recital programs and her first-grade report card, was a file. Ariana opened it. It was a private investigator's report, dated 2 weeks before our first disastrous meeting at the restaurant. The report was about me. No, not about me. It was about my date, the black turtleneck analyst. It was a full background check. Clean record, good family, stable job, no connections, no vices, no complications. "I do not understand," I said, reading over her shoulder. "Why would your father have a file on my date?" "He would not," Ariana whispered, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper. She pulled out another sheet. It was a memo from her father to one of his assistants. The instructions were simple. Find a suitable dinner companion for Ariana. Someone safe. Someone uninvolved. Arrange a blind date. Use her roommate's phone to set it up. Make it seem casual. We both stared at it. Rhea had not been the one to send me that text. She had been just as surprised as I was. It had been Don Mateo. The entire thing, the blind date, it was his. He was trying, in his own controlling, manipulative way, to give his daughter a night of normal. He had found me a safe date, a nice, boring analyst in a black turtleneck. But the table, I said, my mind spinning. The text said table by the window, but he sent me to the wrong one. He sent me to you. Ariana laughed. It was a strange, wet sound. She was crying. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was laughing, a deep, full laugh that shook her. "No, Lena," she said, wiping her eyes. "You do not see it. This is the part he could not control. This is the part that was real." She pieced it together, her mathematician's brain seeing the pattern. He set up a blind date for me, too, with some boring finance guy. Probably at the same restaurant, at the same time. He was going to have me sit at the table in the middle, the safe table. "But the text," I said, "Rhea's text, it told me to go to the table by the window. It told me to find the black turtleneck." "But I was already there," Ariana said, her voice full of wonder. "And I was not wearing a turtleneck, and my date was late, and you saw the third table, the one that was not for you and not for me, the one that was just empty." "Wait, my date, the analyst, had been at the bar. He left with another woman. He had been there. Ariana's date, the one her father set up. Never even showed. I sat at the wrong table," I said. "No, Lena," she whispered, taking my hand. "You did not. My father, with all his planning and all his control, he messed it up. His system, his perfect, paranoid system, had a bug. He put all the pieces on the board, and he still could not predict the one impossible move, you." She was right. He had intended to give her a safe, boring evening. Instead, his own clumsy meddling, his own complicated, overlapping plots had backfired. He had accidentally sent me, the housemaid with the bleach-stained hands, to the one table in the room he never would have chosen. He had accidentally given us to each other. "My father," Ariana said, her voice thick with a decade of complicated grief and love. "He was a monster. He built a cage, but he gave me the key, and he just did not know it." One final letter came from the prison. It was from him. It was addressed to both of us. It was a single sheet of legal paper. He informed us that he was liquidating the very last of his clean assets, the money his lawyers had shielded from the asset seizure, the money from the legitimate side of the business. He was transferring the entire amount, a little over $7 million, to the survivors fund we had established. At the bottom, he had written one sentence. "This is how the golden cage opens." The next spring, on a day that was cold and bright, we went back to the river. We did not go to the restaurant. We went to Pier 4. It was quiet. The stacks of containers were gone. The warehouse had been repainted. It was just a wide, empty concrete pier, scoured clean by the wind. At the very end, where the pier met the water, the city had placed a small, simple memorial. It was not for the DeLuca scandal. It was just a small, granite plaque. It said, "In memory of all those who came to this shore seeking a new life, and to those who were lost in the crossing." There were no names. Ariana rolled her chair to the edge. I stood beside her, my hand on her shoulder. The wind whipped her dark hair across her face. The river was choppy, a deep, churning gray. "It is still dirty," I said, pointing. An iridescent slick of oil was floating near the pilings, a rainbow stain on the water. "It always will be," Ariana said. She leaned her head against my side. "That is the thing about oil. Lena, it spreads. It gets on everything." I watched the slick break apart, the current pulling it out toward the bay. "But it fades," I said. "It does not just disappear. It only fades if someone is willing to do the hard work, to put in the hours, to scrub and scrub and scrub until their hands are raw, until it is clean." I thought about my hands. They were not raw anymore. They were calloused, from coding and from building ramps. I looked at Ariana. She was my teammate, my architect, my irrational, beautiful variable. I finally understood. I had not sat at the wrong table that night. I had not stumbled into someone else's life. I had walked, clumsy and terrified, right into my own and into hers. She tilted her head up, a slow, teasing smile playing on her lips. "I am just saying," she murmured, her gray eyes sparkling. "Next time you decide to sit at the wrong table, try to make sure it is the right person." I smiled, leaning down to kiss her, the taste of salt and wind on our lips. Deal. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Please let me know in the comments below. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts on Lena and Ariana's journey. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It would also mean the world to me if you would hit that hype button to help this story be heard by even more people.